Welcome to part one of our part four series of Autodesk Construction Cloud for general contractors. Today's presenters are Vince Daniele, who is our manager of construction services, and Lisa Stein, who is our construction engagement engineer. So Vince, I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor over to you.
Thank you very much, Lori, and welcome everyone to our first of four-part construction webinar series. As Lori mentioned, my name is Vince Daniele, and joining me is Lisa Stein. I don't know why I'm not able to. There we go. So quick agenda, and then we'll get into the content for today. But we've already introduced ourselves. Our intent is to really focus this webinar on general contractors and the challenges that you're facing in your day-to-day technology workflows. So Lisa will present a challenge, and then I will offer a solution to those challenges via the Autodesk Construction Cloud. After we go through those challenges and solutions, we're going to get into a quick overview, kind of the whole collection of products under the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And then I will get into doing a pretty brief demonstration on the Autodesk Construction Cloud, primarily Autodesk Build and a few features and cost management. So that is the breakdown or the agenda today. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Vince Daniele, and Lori had said that I am the construction team manager here at Imagine It. What that means is I support a team of consultants and trainers that really focus on supporting general contractors, specialty consultants, subcontractors in their use and adoption of the ACC platform. I'm based out of Detroit, and I'll switch it over to Lisa, but I do want to say it's kind of fitting. For some reason, my webcam, I don't know if it's the lighting in my room, but I'm like really dull and black and white, you know, the technical person, and Lisa is the very vibrant and colorful engagement engineer. So I thought it was kind of fitting, but Lisa, I will turn it over to you.
All right, well, we're still going to wait on your fun fact, so I'll come back to you for that in just a second. But yes, as Vince mentioned, my name is Lisa Stein, and I'm a construction engagement engineer here at Imagine It. I've been here for about 2 months now, but I'm coming here from about 7 years at Autodesk, played a lot of different roles there, but probably most relevant for today's conversation was a technical solutions executive for construction for Autodesk global named accounts. So really did a lot of workflow breakdowns, brought in new processes, all that good stuff. And then prior to kind of hopping into sales, I worked in industry as a licensed structural engineer in the electric utility industry for about 8 years. I am in Northern Colorado, and I've told Vince we have to do fun facts. So my fun fact is that I am deaf in my left ear because when I was in high school, I was a lifeguard and I had to dive down to save someone and lost my hearing. Eat that. That's not really fun.
That's not very fun at all.
No.
Oh man, I wasn't ready for a fun fact, but I will say fun for me. Finally, Detroit sports. Me being from Detroit, we've got some sports teams that are actually doing well. Go Tigers, especially, even though they got pummeled by the Cardinals last night. But we'll look for a bounce back tonight with Scooble on the mound. So yeah, fun fact about me. I've born and raised in the Detroit metro area, and I'm huge sports fan. All Detroit. Good enough.
Woo. All right. All right. So as Vince mentioned, kind of how we're going to go through today's call is that I'm going to talk about there's 4 different construction challenges that we've kind of highlighted or pinpointed for you guys, our general contractor organization. So we're going to walk through each of those challenges. I am going to kind of explain what some of the challenge impacts are of that specific item. And then Vince is going to come in and talk about how we can kind of solutionize by using ACC to mitigate a lot of the issues that are coming up from those specific challenges. So we will go ahead and dive into challenge 1 here. All right, so the first challenge that we've identified is there's a lot of fragmentation when it comes to field and office communication. And so some of the impacts of that, some kind of the intricacies of that are there's a lot of delays in terms of sharing updates between the field and the office. So if we think about using paper, if we have new designs that come out, it sometimes, you know, when I was in the field, would take a week and a half to get those new plans to the folks in the field. And so if we're not able to communicate that to the field folks, we are obviously going to run into budget overruns, schedule overruns, a lot of rework, a lot of, you know, decreased morale because we're building something and then having to tear it down. So we see a lot of those delays. We also have a lack of visibility into real-time site conditions. So again, just not having that immediate and instant connection from the field and the office where we're not able to communicate quickly. We also have key changes and approvals that tend to be missed or delayed. So again, if we're not able to quickly communicate with each other, if maybe I'm in the field and I'm not going back to the office for 2 days, there's a lot of information, a lot of red lines, a lot of really important information that might need to go back to the office folks that we're gonna see massive delays on, which is obviously going to impact our work. And then the last impact here are that we have a lot of discrepancies between field data and project management systems. So again, without having that connection, people working in different solutions, people working off of different methodology, and again, that lack of communication, we're going to see a lot of discrepancies in the work that we're doing at the overall project. So I'm going to hand it to Vince, who's going to come in and save the day with some solutions.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So to highlight how we're able to solution some of those issues, primarily the Autodesk Construction Cloud, the theory of the Autodesk Construction Cloud is that it is one common data environment. And I would even go further to say we have one common project environment. So ACC definitely connects both the field via the ACC mobile app and the office teams with real-time updates via those tools. So when you're actually on the job site and an issue comes up, or if you're trying to do an observation walk, a daily observation walk, and you're just capturing photos of the job site, as soon as you take a photo in the field, that gets automatically input into the system. And as long as you have mobile connectivity on the job site, that's going to update for your office employees. So anything critical, those users, those project managers, project executives will get notified immediately. So really, when we say that real time, we mean it. When something is happening in the field and being updated, really all of the stakeholders within the project will get notified and informed of those impacts. So you can mitigate a lot of the risk. Now, when you don't have a mobile connection, maybe you're in a remote job area, that's okay. Everything that you do on the mobile app, as soon as you get connectivity, will automatically synchronize to the project. So for critical items, obviously, you might have to still rely on phone communication to say, hey, this happened in the job site. It'll update later in the system, but I just want you to be aware of this happening. But you know, with today's day and age, most of the time our job sites have some form of connectivity, whether that's through cellular or Wi-Fi. And it really instills that this centralized, this common project environment really does centralize all of the tools in one solution. So ensuring that everyone is seeing the most up-to-date information within the project is critical, and our solution supports that. RFIs, issues, and meeting minutes are stored in one single place. So if you ever need to go back and audit anything or look back at a previous version of a document, that's all stored. And something that's kind of unique about the Construction Cloud is even when you delete something or you think you're deleting it, the record of that data is still stored in the system. Project administrators have the ability to restore it. So even if someone doesn't necessarily know that if what they delete is not being permanently deleted, if you need to go back for any reason and restore documentation, you'll have the ability to do so. So really full transparency within the projects. Now, the field collaboration tools, ultimately, the goal of those is just really streamlining the collaboration and the communication that's happening to resolve items quickly. And our goal is to eliminate those different silos of communication, whether that be via email exchange or logging, I don't know, different types of requests and different systems and having to support many solutions. The Autodesk Construction Cloud really enables all of that communication to happen within the project. So kind of breaking those delays and those issues of having an email stored in maybe only a couple of people's inboxes. We can log that in the system via correspondence, or even just track things via issues, which I'll highlight in my live demo portion. So hopefully that explains some of the challenges, the first set of challenges that Lisa proposed.
Thanks, Vince. All right, so challenge number 2 for general contractors are schedule and budget overruns. And some of the impacts that we're feeling from that specific challenge is that our projects tend to exceed timelines, and we don't really have insight into that as we're kind of going through the project. So we're not able to capture, trajectory or project trending until the project is over. And at that time, it's a little bit too late to course correct, right? So not having insight into how we're doing in terms of project success is super important as it pertains to schedule and budget overruns. We're also seeing a lot of inaccurate or delayed cost reporting. So again, not working in that common data environment or that single space, and not being able to connect our office and field workflows with actual cost reporting is going to lead to, again, getting that information in much later and not understanding how it's impacting our project, or inaccurate information if we're just having to kind of guess and put placeholders in there. Our teams also are having difficulty identifying or resolving issues early on. Again, without that project insight and project visibility of how our different workflows are coming together and how our project is trending, we're not able to see if maybe there's a specific root cause that's leading us to a lot of issues or a lot of hangups on our project. And so that's going to lead to a lot of delays and a lot of potential rework. And then there's a lot of manual scheduling. And again, because we've got all these different stakeholders on our project, if everyone's doing manual scheduling and not everyone has access to a master schedule, that's super siloed, and there's not a good line of sight into who's working on what roles and responsibilities look like, what timelines look like, what critical path looks like. And so that manual piece really is a detriment to our current work processes. But Vince is gonna share some helpful things we can do here.
Yeah, really to highlight some of those impacts on timeline and mitigating risk within the project. In the Autodesk Construction Cloud, we have several tools, I guess primarily on the timeline and forecasting piece. Within Autodesk Cost Management, if we're tracking in real time things like change orders and budget impacts, we are able to forecast, and there are tools in there where we can distribute different budget codes along the timeline, or individual timelines that tie into a schedule in the project. So it really gives the project administrators, the project executives, even C-level leadership, there's all types of tools and dashboards that we can populate automatically. They're baked into the system that will give those stakeholders that visibility to things that might be impacting the overall timeline of the project. If there is a lot of risk happening, what are the risk factors that are creating those issues within the project? So really, again, this idea of a common data environment really lends itself to a better reporting system and having dashboards to really display the in-project work that's happening that will impact timelines and overrun on budgets, etc. Now, for the schedule piece specifically, a cool thing that Autodesk supports, and Lisa maybe alluded to it a bit, is scheduling, or schedulers might manage their schedule within external tools like Microsoft Project or Primavera P6. Instead of actually building the schedule out within the Autodesk Construction Cloud, we're able to allow those schedulers to work in their native solutions, but still import updates and impacts to the schedule within the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So through an import mechanism, we can create a display version, I'll call it a read-only version of the scheduler's schedule. And much like documents, and again, I'll get into this in live demo, but much like our documents where we can compare different versions of documents and changes that are occurring throughout the duration of the construction, we can also compare schedule changes and see how different schedule changes might impact individual work plans within the project, and some really cool stuff there. And then I already mentioned the forecasting portion of cost, but the forecast features really do allow for early intervention and accurate resource planning. I can give an anecdote, but I don't want to go into too much detail. But basically, I've been directly working with a client recently who, once we got into the forecasting side of cost management, they were blown away with how easy it was to move, to do forecast adjustments and to potentially move savings out reallocations around within the budget. And all of that's happening actively within the project. You don't have to run 50 reports and have someone go through a report on a per week basis. They can just log into the system and see where the budgets are at. And it really is a great tool for project managers to really manage the work to complete and the forecast within their projects and stay on top of it.
Great. All right, so challenge number 3 that we've identified for general contractors is an unfortunate risk of litigation from potential documentation gaps. So again, we're not working in the same space as all of our other stakeholders typically. So we tend to miss out on important documentation, or we have inconsistent documentation. So again, if our office information, right, maybe our design information hasn't been relayed to the field, then we're working off of the wrong information. So the documentation that we might be providing is inconsistent with what is actually happening in the design process. So, or we tend to miss a lot of information. If things are done on paper, things are done super manually, it can often be really hard to get that information back into a shared project environment. So we tend to miss a lot of key information. We also have a lack of audit trails. If we're working in a really manual environment, I don't know who filled out what form. I don't know when it was filled out. I don't know who made this red line. I don't know, if there's a question about a red line I'm seeing on a drawing and I don't know who to go ask about it. I don't know if it's super important. I don't know if it's pertinent. I don't know the time associated with that. So a lack of audit trails, especially with approvals and transmittals and things like that, can lead to a lot of potential liability, right? If you needed to send out really important information to other stakeholders on the project and they didn't get that, and you don't have a way to prove that you actually sent that to them, that's a big potential liability there. Kind of going again with what I talked about and missing your inconsistent documentation, paper is super siloed, right? We're not able to share all of that important information with the entire project team. That leads to really disconnected systems. If you think about all the different stakeholders that we have in a project and all of the different ways that those stakeholder organizations are communicating amongst themselves, then we all need to be communicating together as an entire project team. So there's a ton of siloing and disconnection. Really not a lot of confidence that everybody's getting the right information that they need to successfully work on this project. And then the last impact of this challenge is there's a lot of delays in documenting changes and issues. So as I mentioned, if we're using paper, we're out in the field, I could be making red lines and markups, but those might take a few days to get back to the office. Then the office is going to print new plans. That could take a week for me to get those back in the field. So there's a lot of delays in making sure that those issues are being mitigated and reflected and communicated with the rest of the project team. So Vince, how can we fix it?
Well, Lisa, within the Autodesk Construction Cloud, all of those changes that are happening, we mentioned this, I think, in the first challenge, but again, it's the recurring theme of having one common project environment. When we're making changes, whether that's field red lines or tracking RFIs and issues, everything, all of the statuses and the updates are happening in real time. So as long as we're not resorting to old school paper documents in the field and then taking photos of the paper document that might be marked up, although we could support that. But when something is captured, it's automatically tracked within the system. It's hard-coded with a date and a timestamp and who created that activity. So if we ever have to go back to anything for legal purposes, or if we're just trying to review, hey, when did this actually get input to the system, so we can hold someone, whether it's internal to your own team or an external subcontractor, responsible and accountable for that item, you have that paper trail, or I won't call it paper trail, digital paper trail, or the digital audit trail available to resolve or to track any of the historic data associated to those issues down. Document control is no different. So in document control within the Autodesk Construction Cloud, same idea. When someone uploads a new document to the system, whether that be a new version of an existing document or a completely new version of a document, all of that information, the time they uploaded it, the person that uploaded it, it's all tied to that within the system. So if we're ever trying to track anything down or communicate to someone that maybe had uploaded a new version of a document, we have all of that there within the project. So we can make sure that our records are up to date and that we're looking at the most current information and have an understanding of where it came from in the first place. That goes for not only documents, but photos, field forms that are being filled out, RFIs that are stored, submittals that are being processed. So again, keeping everything within one common data environment is really going to ensure that if you need to go to litigation or see when things are uploaded and hold people accountable, you have all of the record data within the project. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it can't be deleted. If it's in your project, it's going to be there for good. The only way, and even at Imagine It, we have no ability to permanently delete any items from your projects. There's been a few rare cases where we've had customers reach out to Autodesk or via Imagine It reach out to Autodesk and have things permanently deleted, but it's definitely not a common practice, and it's very, very, very difficult to do. So again, the idea of keeping centralized records to make dispute resolution faster and more transparent, these tools will give you that. I was going to make a comment. I'll save it for the next challenge.
Thanks, Vince. All right, so our last challenge we're going to talk about today is inefficient subcontractor coordination. And some of the impacts that we see from that specific challenge are that subcontractors miss deadlines, right? If we're not able to share that new and updated information with them, we're not able to get that to them in the field at a timely way, they are going to miss deadlines, and then our entire project starts to fall behind. We also see a lot of overlapping schedules and a lack of coordination. So again, if we're not pulling our information from that same project space, we might have people working, different trades folks, different subs working on tasks that kind of intersect with each other. You know, of course, there's a critical path. There are certain tasks that need to be done before other tasks can be done. But if we're not able to share the schedule, we don't have insight in that to give to the subcontractors. We see a lot of overlapping schedule. We see a lot of clashes happening out on the construction site, and that just all leads to spending more money and rework and again, just frustrated folks. We also have a difficulty in tracking subcontractor performance. So again, if everyone's working in their own instance, typically what happens in a project when we're working off of paper and everyone's siloed in their own solutions and their own environments is, again, we don't have any good insight into how that project is trending. So we're not able to really get a good grasp on sub performance until the project is over. And then, of course, it's too late to mitigate any of that. And then there's frequent miscommunication. Again, you know, Vince was talking about issues and people held responsible for things. If we're not working off of that in a consistent or shared environment, you know, we might be sending an email to a subcontractor, but maybe that person is out of the office for 2 weeks, and so that issue is not getting handed down or communicated with the other person in charge. So there's a ton of miscommunication that we see in the field because of this lack of coordination. Vince, over to you.
Great. Yeah, so I would say probably out of all of the challenges, maybe if you've been on any of our other webinars, you hear us beat the dead horse about the common data environment. But in terms of general contractors, probably the most important thing or the most critical thing that we maybe don't have full control over is managing our subcontractors and what they have visibility to, and ensuring that they don't have visibility to things that we don't want them to have visibility to. So within the cloud platform, we do have a great role-based permissioning system that allows us to really set up standards and construct project templates so that subcontractors do automatically get access to the critical items, critical documentation that they require access to, but you can still maintain security in your own internal workflows, documents, and really restrict them from seeing things that you don't want them to have visibility to. One thing that ties back to, I think, challenge 3 on schedule. That idea that Lisa just said, the challenge of them seeing or maybe them not performing a certain task to a set timeline in the project. Well, not only does the subcontractor have visibility to their portion of the schedule, but obviously your project managers are managing that, and they're able to see that if an issue comes up that does have a schedule impact, say the subcontractor creates an issue within the project, publishes that out to the project manager, they can tie that item, or they can manage that item and tie it to a schedule and decide, hey, this is going to have a trickle down effect within the project schedule, and we need to get in front of that sooner rather than later before it becomes a real cost impact to the project. So we have all these tools and mechanisms to audit those items, tie them to scheduled tasks, and really hold the subcontractors, again, accountable for their work, but also have transparency and visibility into things that might be causing your projects timeline impacts and cost impacts. Task assignments can be clearly defined and trackable. So I mentioned things like issues, but there's more to it than that. We can assign subcontractors daily tasks and forms that they have to fill out, checklists that they're required to submit daily, so that if they are missing anything, we can generate reports to say, hey, they did not execute, or they did not submit their daily log today. Again, just keeping your project managers up to speed on the day-to-day activities. And then in terms of the communication tools, using issues and correspondence within the project, linking those to their respective items, whether that's a markup on a sheet or an RFI or a submittal request. We're linking all of these items together to create that audit trail. So if we ever have to go back to the subcontractor and say, one thing or another that they were responsible for, we're able to do so. Outside of that, I will, a couple of things I noted as Lisa was talking, the system in terms of subcontractor responsibility. I know that a lot of our clients, they know that the subcontractors, a lot of them are maybe old school and used to using spreadsheets to track their own information, or paper documentation, and they're not going to change, or they don't want to change. The ACC mobile tools and even the desktop tools are extremely intuitive, especially if you take the time to set up your project templates well, so that the subcontractors don't need to be overwhelmed with the entire environment or the entire system. We can really give them brief training on the picks and clicks, and they're able to execute their project responsibilities. And what we found is that subcontractors are actually more open to using the digital tools than going back to their spreadsheets to track their own issues or RFIs that they're responsible for responding to. So through minimal training, they can really have an impact on the project and get to work and create that more advanced reporting that our project managers and project executives are looking for. And besides that, one last thing, and then we're going to get into the quick overview slide that Lisa's put together. But I would say from the subcontractor perspective, if they have already adopted a solution like the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and you want to tie, and they want to maybe work in their own hub and link information to you as the general contractor into your Autodesk environment, there are native tools within ACC that will allow that linkage of data. Primarily, that's called Autodesk Bridge. It supports both document synchronization and sheet synchronization, but there are a number of external tools. We've created our own here at Imaginet called Pulse, and Pulse is essentially just a middleware that will allow us to link into external systems like Procore, SharePoint, other ACC environments, so that we can exchange data not only between documentation and sheets, but also RFIs, submittals, and a number of other items within the project. So if the subcontractor says, hey, we want to live in our environment and we don't want to do the work in your environment, there are tools out there that will allow that seamless synchronization of data between two disparate hubs or solutions to keep the project up to date. I'll get off my soapbox now, Lisa, and give you the next couple of slides here.
Yes, Vince was chosen to do the demo because he's concise, but I'm curious if
Yeah,
I should
I
have
totally
crafted that.
agree. Yeah.
But just one slide here. So we're going to do a quick, I'm going to do a quick overview of the ACC platform, and then Vince will actually take us through that. So we can go to the next slide here. I cannot take credit for this beautiful slide. One of my coworkers that I see is on this call made it. So thank you to him. But what we're looking at here is the platform that is the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So important to note that the ACC, Autodesk Construction Cloud, is a platform that is made up of different solutions inside of it, right? So we can look at the 4 different phases of our project. We can see in the design space, we're really looking at the BIM Collaborate product. When we move over to the plan phase, where there's some other products in here, but what I'm going to super be focused on is Autodesk Takeoff. And then when we move over to build and handover, commissioning, facilities, maintenance, all that good stuff, we're looking at Autodesk Build. What is important to note about this slide here is that across the board, so that black strip kind of in the middle of the slide, super important that our document management is coming from the same space for any phase of the project that we're in. So this means that we could have our design folks making updates to drawings, to models, and the people that are in the field, you, the general contractor, the subcontractors, if we're all working in this same environment, we're going to get those updates to drawings and models, sheets, specifications, all that good stuff immediately. So it's super, super important. That doesn't matter what phase of the project we're working in. We all know that construction is not linear. We're going back and forth quite often. So everybody will have access to that unified data down there. But what Vince is going to show today, and what we really spent a lot of time talking about, is in the build phase. So we're going to be looking at some project management workflows. We talked specifically about RFI submittals, schedule. We obviously don't have time to go into all of these, but just know that this is where they kind of stand in terms of the platform. Cost management is also in that area, in the build area. When we look at quality and safety, that could be things like inspections, that could be things like forms, checklists, punch lists, issue items, all that good stuff. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Vince to do about a 10-12 minute demo of the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and then we'll come back for some questions. So if you do have any as we go through this, please feel free to put them in the question area, and we'll get to them once we're done with this live demo. Take it away, Vince.
Cool. I will try to be as concise as possible so we don't run over. And my intent on this demo was to generally do an overview, but then key in on some of the common themes of the solutions that we've discussed thus far in this presentation. So just generally, I wanted to give everyone visibility of what this common project environment looks like. So in the Autodesk Construction Cloud, we do have our different products that Lisa just highlighted in her overview slide in what we call the product picker. The primary tools for project management within the ACC platform is Autodesk Build. So the tools that pertain to construction management, construction project management are really all encapsulated in Autodesk Build. And then directly below that, we have cost management, which I will highlight and show some examples of budget and some of the reporting on the dashboards there in cost. So these 2 components are actually part of the same solution, even though they're shown as different modules within the Construction Cloud. If you purchase Autodesk Build, you automatically get access to cost management. So starting in Autodesk Build, you can see on the left side of the screen, a lot of those different elements that we referred to previously in the presentation are listed. And if I start with files, that black bar that Lisa showed at the bottom of her last slide, really everything is supported via files. Even though I'm in Autodesk Build, this files tool is shown. I switch over to just Autodesk Docs. We see the same folder structure. If I go into cost management, this will also have a link or a reference to files. So this is what Lisa was referring to. We have one document management tool that supports the entire project. Whether your users have access to just cost or just build or just even Autodesk Docs, they will have access to the files and the documents contained within those projects. Beyond that, with documentation, I'll get into a little bit more specifics on that, but I mentioned earlier that sense of security and the role-based permissioning that we can store and we can standardize within the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Every folder that we create, we can assign permissions. These are very similar to kind of your Windows user group permission sets, where not only can we determine who has access to a folder, but we can also determine what level of access via a permission does that individual group or user have to that folder. And the great thing about the permissions here is that when we start establishing role-based permissions, like for this example, auto specs files, I opened up the permissions for this folder and you can see that there's a contractor listed. Well, I don't want that contractor to be able to manage the permissions on this folder and add people to it, but I do want to give them the ability to download and view any files that we put into that folder. We want them to be able to publish their markups to any of the documents. And in this case, we might even want to give them the ability to upload documents to that folder. If I didn't want my contractor to have the ability to upload documentation, then I can switch their permission here very simply by just going down one level to our, I call it the create one level of permission. This gives them all of the ability that I previously had mentioned, except it removes their ability to be able to upload new documents to that folder. So if we wanted to restrict access, say we had internal files within our folder structure in our project, I'll just call this project file 6. I'll just rename this real quick, call this internal only. Within our project template that we set up in ACC, we can set this, predefine this permission on this folder, and we can say, hey, that everyone that's part of our company would have access based on either a company permission, or if we're talking about a template, it would be a role-based permission. But then we would just set all of the roles within the project that we want to have access to this folder. And again, we can still limit what our own members are able to do within those folders, within those files. So really secure permissioning system within your project environment. Beyond that, with files, I also want to show, especially as it pertains to sharing information out, maybe you just have a subcontractor that has a very small part in your project. You don't want to go through the hoops of training them on how to upload files and mark things up or create issues within the system, but you just want to be able to share files out of the project and give them access to those files without having to add them as a user or as a member to the specific ACC project. We still have the ability to do that. So with files, if we want to designate a public shared link, say this whole folder, my spec PDFs, I want to share this out to someone external. We can share this. We basically create, if you're familiar with Dropbox or Box or Google Drive or OneDrive, all of those different cloud repository, cloud storage systems have the ability to share out specific files or specific folders by just providing a link to an external user. We have the same capability within the Construction Cloud, where I can designate that anyone with a link to this folder, we can either email them a little message here to share it out directly, or we can go into this links tab, copy this link, share it in Microsoft Teams or in an email. And by just having this link, that would give them access to download the documents and the files within that folder. And you can limit that. It's one of the advanced settings in files. Under the advanced settings, if we want those public links to automatically expire after a set duration of time, we have a lot of different options. The link goes all the way up to 365 days prior to expiration, or we can go to as little as 30 days to allow that link to be a live link for them to get access to files and download them. This does not require them to actually be a project member within your ACC project. All right. Switching over to our construction documents, which are housed in the Sheets area of build. Our Sheets area, generally, everyone that you're adding to the project, all project members will have visibility to Sheets within the project. And much like files, we can limit what types of permissions they have and what they can do with those sheets. So again, speaking of permissions, normally we allow everyone in the project to have at a minimum view only or view and export, meaning that they can view and download specific sheets within the project. But if we wanted to give different groups of people the ability to publish markups and create issues within those documents, then we can add those different role-based permissions to our template and allow them to publish markups and create issues, etc. Now, getting into the sheets, I actually opened up another tab. One of the things that we kind of spoke about frequently in the previous slides in the presentation was the ability to support versioning within the product. So right now you'll see that all of the sheets, these are just showing version 1. I only published one version of this document set so far within this project, but I did have another project that I've used for demo ready to go here that had, I think this one had 3 different versions of the same document. So in the sheets area, if we want to just use this tool to compare what changed between version 1 and version 2 of the document, we can go into a compare mode and we're able to see, based on the colors that are highlighted in this sheet, what changed in that design. So in this case, the let's see, the previous version of this, Rev 1, I think, oh, that's Rev 2. So my current version is highlighted with the red lines, and the previous version of this document is highlighted in the blue lines. So this gives you quick insight to see what changes occurred to your documents. What was added, what was removed, what was modified. I don't have anything showing that was modified within this view, but there is a third level here that would show you, or at least sorry, I'm confusing this with viewing 3D models. But if something changed within a 3D model that was published to the cloud, not only would it show you the red and the blue, but there's also a yellow area that would show you that, say, size of a door changed, the element was modified maybe in a Revit model, and that update would be highlighted within this online interface. I think that was it for sheets and visibility. If they do have markups, there's some nice little widgets here that show you that a particular sheet has published markups. So that little squiggly line there, it's indicating that there's 4 unpublished markups, and the little crown here indicates that there are 79 published markups to this sheet. So if I open this sheet, there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff overlaid over the top of it. And there are tools and mechanisms for us to really isolate the markups or the issues that have been pinned to this particular document. So right here within the web, I can click on the issues tool. I can filter this down to a specific type of category. Let's say it's a punch item that was captured in the field. And that gets rid of all of those other issue pins. If I even wanted to go further and say, hey, let's filter this down by punch list items that have not been closed, then we can filter that status to just the open punch items to further refine this view. And then we can start to click through these to get the detail of these punch items and see who was responsible for them, who was it assigned to, when was the due date. So Scott's like 3 years overdue on this particular punch item. I might want to get on top of Scott to resolve this punch item. So directly from the sheet module, the sheet tool, you can view all of this data, all of these references, again, creating this audit trail. If this punch item had anything, let me see if I can find one that maybe is associated to a photo or has a photo assigned to it. Here we go, that's a good one. So I can see within this punch item, hey, there's a photo that was captured in the field and assigned to this punch item. There's also a form associated to it. So I have this nice little reference link or this audit trail that can really review and see what the history of that particular punch item was. And then beyond that, so this is the details of the actual issue itself that was logged in the system. But to the right of that, we have an activity log. We mentioned that audit trail. I can go all the way back to when this issue was initially created. So January 9th, 2023 at 2:36 p.m. That time would be local to whatever your project time was set up as. So the issue was created, description was added, some of the details were filled out. The status went from open to pending, pending to closed, closed to in review back to open. So I can see that there was a whole bunch of status activity that happened on this issue. And even though it was closed at one point, whoever initially created that issue or a project administrator has the ability to reopen an existing issue. And whenever stuff like that happens, we have a whole notification system baked into Autodesk that will inform people that these items have been reopened. I'm meant to be concise here, so let me just show that any issue that we create within a document does get tracked within the Issues tool in ACC. So much like I was showing within the sheet view itself, when we're viewing our issues, this is just a collection of all of the issues that have been created in the project. A great form of collaboration and coordination is utilizing issues to keep track of the day-to-day activities within the project. And if we want to filter down this list, we have the same mechanism to filter down our punch items. We can highlight everything that is overdue very easily, which probably is a lot. So 25 overdue punch items within this project. And beyond that, for transparency, if we wanted to just kick out an on-demand report of these issues, we have this button here where we can export this report. And we can decide, what is that issue detail or issue summary? Do we want to just capture the issues that have been pinned to sheets? Do we want to save that report to a file folder in the project? And then we have some other controls over the formatting of that report, whether we want to include a cover page and file links, how many photos do we want to include in that report per row. So a lot of great stuff here, capturing those other references like the forms and the other files that might be referenced to the issue, all in one report. Whew. Okay, one last thing I want to flip over to cost, just to kind of talk about timeline and forecasting. Oh, wrong project. Let me jump over to this one. So within cost management, as a project manager, right from our dashboard, we can kind of see what our budget trends, budget and cost trends are within the project. Budget really being the revenue side of the project and cost being the job cost side, where your subcontracts and your purchase orders live. So you have some nice bar graphs here. This display might not be the best, but there are other reporting mechanisms that get into a lot more detail via Power BI and some other tools. But in terms of tracking things that might be open, like change orders, we've got a nice little stock change order card here to see that we've got, $32,000 in approved change orders that have gone through. We've got some owner change orders that are still in submission, awaiting on owner approval. And then we might have some that are just simply open. So from a very high level, project managers can go in and view these dashboards and see where the statuses of different change events are within the project. Obviously, if my open bar graph is $2.5 million, I've got to crack down on some people to get those things processed or close these things out if they're not real or if they're not going to be an approved owner change. Let's see. We can go to the different levels of change order requests, subcontract change orders to see if those have been processed and what's still sitting out there and pending. But then from the budget view, we have a lot of other tools. Just simply in the budget view, we can see variance against our revenue items between cost and revenue. If we're in the black on certain budgets, if we're in the red on certain budgets, this gives your project managers the ability to, on a set cadence, maybe that's monthly or weekly, reallocate savings within the project and move those dollars around. So just scratching the surface here, there's all types of other charts and reportings, or charts and reports that we can show, especially on the forecast side. But this is the element where we can tie schedule activity to these different budget codes that are set up within the project. And then I can't recall if I have a good cash flow graph here, decent. But based on what has already been your actual cost in the project versus the original budget versus projected costs, things that are sitting in a pending status like change orders, we can really see where the health of the financial aspects of the project are with these graphs, and maybe recognize things before they become a real problem within the project. So probably took 15 or 20 minutes there. So I will shut up. I'll stop sharing my screen here and go back to the PowerPoint for a couple of wrap-up items and to open up some time for Q&A. So let me see if I can do this. All right, I know we're back on your slide, Lisa, but I will move past that. Okay, so a couple of last items here. Everything that we've really talked about so far is the solution and what the Autodesk solution supports. This solution can be very customized and configured to suit your needs. So out of the box, I would say, generally the solution is really geared more towards general contractors than any other specific discipline of users. But even with a general contractor, there's a level of work that goes into preparing your own environment to support your project details and how you guys perform projects as general contractors. So something that we do as a service consulting company is we assist you with that process. We have our tried and true, call it our, this advanced, our implementation. We used to call this, or maybe still do call this, our Imagine It, Take Aim, which stands for Assured Implementation Methodology. And our methodology to an implementation really starts with understanding your business and how you guys want to work in your projects and the different challenges that historically you've run into with projects. During the planning phase of an implementation, we'll capture those pain points. We'll go through a discovery period and really try to understand how you want the solution to support your needs. Once we understand that, we'll roll into a development phase where we'll work with you directly to configure your environment, review that customization with you, and validate that, yes, our permissions are set correctly, our workflows are set up properly. Then we'll educate what we like to call our core, call them project administrator teams via training. So those that are going to be responsible for maintaining your solution over the course of several, many, many years, we want to teach your team how to be able to maintain and make updates rather than having to reach out to a consultant like Imagine It to support every minor change that needs to happen within your standardization of your project templates. Once we've got that dialed in and your core team is trained up, then we go into the deployment phase and start rolling this out to not only internal users or internal field users, but also supporting that deployment to external field users. So your subcontractors, your specialty consultants, the A&E firms that you're working with. We help to establish a training plan. I mentioned that the product is very intuitive, but maybe establishing what those few features and those few items that your consultants are responsible for inputting into your project environment, we can really cater and customize that deployment phase and that training so that's not overwhelming to people outside of your company or even internal to your company, that, hey, if you're responsible for creating issues or punches, here's what you need to know. You don't need to know about updating schedule and issuing change orders and anything that doesn't impact that person within their project responsibilities. And then obviously after we go through a deployment, as a service provider, Imagine It, we want to help you. We want to be there to support you through your adoption of the product. So there's a period of time, whether that's 6 months to a year after you've gone through this implementation, we're here there to support you. So the same consultant that worked with you on the implementation, they're a resource to you to schedule consulting sessions, mentoring sessions, ongoing learning, etc. Really any of your requests that are going to help that transition to the Autodesk product go smoother, that's what we want to be here to support you with. And I think that's about it. We do have so we mentioned earlier on, this is a 4-part series. The other 3 parts that are coming up are ACC for specialty contractors, where we'll focus a little bit more on their challenges and how they can solution them in the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Same goes for owners and designers. So I know that the point of this was to get the general contractors to attend this session, but our intent was that maybe general contractors would want to join these additional sessions to see what types of challenges that maybe you're not privy to directly that these other personas are having in adopting technology. Whew, all right. Q&A time. I see the question log flashing on my screen here. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we have any questions, Vince, but
Okay.
that was a great overview. I guess a question that I get asked a lot when I'm talking to general contractors is, this all looks really amazing, but it also looks like a lot that we need to take on. So do you kind of have like a best practice for how an organization could just start implementing something like this and start to see an immediate ROI on their efficiencies?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of that implementation approach, when we go through discovery, we really like to highlight those key, like, immediate ROI impact items, and we like to tackle those first. We know that there is a ton of functionality within this solution, and you guys might not be ready to take all of that on at once. You know, obviously through implementation, we help to resolve and hopefully get you set up for success even further down the road. But maybe if there's an immediate need for supporting RFIs, tracking punch items, generating forms and reports, and those are the big priority items for you initially, we like to take a really phased approach to this. We understand that it can be extremely overwhelming taking everything on at once. So through our implementation, we key on those immediate ROI items. We make sure to configure and standardize those first. And then maybe a year after you've gone through that adoption and you're really liking the tools and you've got that widespread adoption for both field and office users, that, hey, now we're going to get into this cost management stuff. You know, we love the tools on the build side. We want to transition over to cost management and start to utilize those tools and those workflows. Maybe a year after your initial build implementation, we revisit a cost management implementation, or maybe we start to tackle more items on the build side. So our approach, you know, we want to support the best practices and make sure that your adoption goes smoothly. And I think right away, even with file management, you'll start to see immediate ROI on implementing the solution, even if you're not using all of the tools out of the gate.
Perfect. Great response. Well, I think we're at the top of the hour. I want to just take a minute to thank everyone that joined us today. As Vince mentioned, we've got some other webinars coming up too in our series, so be sure to attend those if you're able to, or curious or interested, or be sure to pass them on to people that you think that they would be applicable for. But thank you so much for your time again.